President-elect Trump's cabinet is rounding into shape, and some of his picks are facing scrutiny. Yesterday, Trump named Brendan Carr, the senior Republican on the Federal Communications Commission, as chairman. Meanwhile, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, Trump's choice for attorney general, is facing backlash. Gaetz resigned 2 days before a House ethics report about him was set to be released. Also being questioned, Army National Guard veteran and Fox News host Pete Hegseth to lead the Department of Defense, and Tulsi Gabbard to head U.S. intelligence services.
Joining us now is political analyst Paul Lisnek. Good morning, Paul.
Hey, Larry and Robin. Good morning.
So some of these picks are controversial even for Republicans, but talk about the process and what are the options of these becoming reality?
Yeah, it's a great place to start, Larry, because, look, first of all, President Trump won. That means presidents get to pick the cabinet they want to surround them. That's what he's doing. And he won sizably. So how much questioning will there be? It should also be no surprise that he's got a lot of controversial picks here. He said he was going to shake things up. That's what these picks do. What can Democrats do about it? Not much if the Republicans, who have a majority, stand behind each of these folks. And we can talk about some of them, but the bottom line is this is up to the Republicans to put them in. I should say Trump is making an effort to have the Republicans stand down and put the Senate in a recess position so that he can get all these folks through without having to have these hearings. That really would be quite dangerous. For the Senate to give up that power of advice and consent would be really a huge step. Mitch McConnell, I know you guys are aware, issued a tweet recently where he said that's not happening. We're not going into recess. But McConnell's not in charge anymore. If John Thune goes into recess, that will be a huge misstep on the part of Senate to give up that power.
Well, let's talk about the ones that are specifically, in jeopardy, or if just would cause a lot of discussion. Matt Gaetz and RFK Jr.
So Matt Gaetz is probably the one with the most difficulty faced because of the allegations that have gone against him and all of that sort of thing that the House has been dealing with. Here's what's interesting. The House didn't finish its report. They hadn't quite finished its investigation. They were supposed to have a session about it last Friday. And so now we're in this battle of, does the House release the report, with the Speaker stepping up and saying, no, now that he's not a member of Congress because he immediately resigned upon being named, so we can't release this report. There is history of certain reports being released after a member of Congress resigns. But the real critical factor here is the Senate that has to decide on Matt Gaetz. They need to see that report. Many of those senators say they want to see it. If they see it, it probably gets leaked. But if it doesn't get finished, they don't get it. That's the hugest challenge, though, to pick somebody who has got a lot of problems within the system himself to head the nation's most powerful law enforcement system. That's really questionable. With regard to RFK, obviously to handle the drug system, the HHS position is something that he can shake things up. Kennedy kind of pulls back saying, I never said I was anti-vaccine. So we'll see how some of that plays out. He has a better chance of getting through, but certainly he's taken a lot of controversial positions, which are giving Democrats significant concern.
And I'm not sure most people would be familiar with the FCC pick or the energy pick or the discussions about Treasury, but is there anything there that's controversial that even Republicans like these other picks may have some concerns about?
Well, so Chris Wright, who's the picking for Department of Energy, is a climate denier and has taken steps sort of to step away from that. Once again, Democrats will be shocked by it, but shouldn't be because, of course, Trump has stated that he doesn't really believe so much the climate change is anything significant now. So he'll have somebody in place who probably will get through, who will handle that. Brendan Carr, who you referenced, Larry, is the new FCC chair, has been a commissioner since 2017 when Trump appointed him. He actually wrote the section in Project 2025 about going after a lot of the media companies, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Apple, basically concerned about the censorship that they are putting on conservative ideas. That's what he wants to pursue. Okay. Project 2025 shows it as a pretty aggressive stance. He wants to go after some television companies, too. That'll be more difficult.
All right, Paul, thanks for joining us. You can watch Paul every Sunday at 9 a.m. for the Political Report. Thanks again.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.